This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The WHO's emergency committee reconvenes as the coronavirus death toll climbs to 170. At least 36 civilians killed by suspected rebels in the DRC. And it's a go. The UK readies for Friday's exit after the EU okays Brexit's terms. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. In business, mining group De Beers kickstarts the year on a high with diamond sales up by 9%. And in sports, South Africa's Vernon Philander bids farewell to international cricket. We begin with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. The death toll has now reached 170, all within China, while more than 100 people have recovered. The total number of confirmed cases globally is now over 7,900, with the vast majority in China. Around half of the cases are at the epicenter of the outbreak, Wuhan, the capital of Hubei province. About 80,000 people are under medical observation. 83 cases are confirmed outside China. The Philippines and India have both confirmed their first cases. Thailand has 14, Japan has 11, and Singapore 10. Malaysia has 8 and Australia 7. France and the United States have 5 each. Now, masks are in demand as China fights the new coronavirus outbreak. According to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the nation produces over 8 million masks each day. This accounts for only around 40% of China's daily production capacity of 20 million, and that's due to the Lunar New Year holiday break. As people head back to work after the Chinese Spring Festival, the country's Textile Association expects the normal production of masks to resume after the 3rd of February. It also says daily capacity could reach as much as 180 million by the end of February, as new production lines are used. Now, Beijing's health authority says most of the cases in the capital city have been imported, but the situation is transitioning from imported to spreading. Many clustered cases have occurred. Officials warn the risk of coronavirus infections in Beijing is rising. Health officials say local second-generation cases have appeared, and they've found younger people being infected, and even cases where the infected showed no visible symptoms. The health authority says it will strengthen its control and monitoring systems as the city prepares for people returning to the city after the Chinese New Year holiday. Officials will continue to monitor those traveling to Beijing from Hubei province, as well as the health conditions of those who've had close contact with confirmed cases. The coronavirus outbreak hit China at a time when families come together for their Lunar New Year holidays. Yet even those who had to give up that family time are finding similar joy through many hours of work. From answering questions to booking checkup appointments, community service centers in Wuhan are doing all they can to help local residents and find a renewed spirit of family. CGTN's Sun Tianwan shows us.
A busy day for a community service center in Wuhan.
是接电话，就是回复人家。
我还看您喝水喝了一半，然后就
那是正常的，
是吗？
Hundreds of calls for help, inquiries, and checkup appointments, sometimes at midnight. It's been a day-to-day norm over the Chinese New Year as the coronavirus outbreak has worsened.
The holiday finally came. I was planning to take my family out and see some friends and relatives, but it's all gone. Change of plans.
Many people complained at first, but they knew 10,000 residents in this neighborhood are counting on them. After scientists confirmed that the coronavirus can be transmitted between people, residents are encouraged to stay indoors and avoid unnecessary contact. The became the community office's duty to help those in need.
I boiled herbal tea at home. It's for my chronic pharyngitis because I talk too much. I feel much better after drinking this, and my voice sounds louder and much clearer.
Beside the desk work, Meng and her colleagues also run errands for seniors. One of them had just recovered from cancer. Meng says Ms. Chen's immune system is too vulnerable to be exposed outside, so they simply leave the supplies on her doorstep. When we were about to leave, we heard this. The couple say they're optimistic even in a lockdown. 65-year-old Li Bao-e is a musician. During the outbreak, he still teaches students on his phone. His wife Zheng Yongyi says she misses small talks with the neighbors, but even more, the green goods.
We don't have enough vegetables. There's only one supermarket, not many fresh greens, only other commodities.
It's an emergency. No one saw it coming. We must stay positive and cooperate with the government to pull this through.
The couple say they hope everything can return to normal again so they can jam with the band and gather with friends. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN, Wuhan.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is meeting to decide on whether the deadly coronavirus outbreak should be declared an international public health emergency as the number of cases has grown. CGTN's correspondent Rebecca Bundan reports from Geneva.
WHO's Emergency Committee will meet on Thursday afternoon to discuss whether or not to declare the coronavirus situation an international health emergency. The organisation says that it's concerned by the rise in the number of cases, and that's why it's taken this decision, and also the evidence of human-to-human transmission of the virus outside of China. This is something that it says is worrying. The WHO has said that it's an emergency situation in China, but it decided against declaring it an international health emergency, something which was criticised by some commentators. The organisation on Wednesday praised China's response to the outbreak, including its transparency.
China's efforts to contain the outbreak at the epicenter have been essential for preventing the further spread of the virus. China identified the pathogen in record time and shared it immediately, which led to the rapid development of diagnostic tools. They are completely committed to transparency, both internally and externally, and they have agreed to work with other countries who need their support.
The WHO Director General this week visited China. As a result, it's been decided that the organisation will send international experts to China to work with their Chinese counterparts to help global response efforts. The WHO is also continuing to advise countries on preparations as the virus spreads, including how to detect it, how to treat cases, and how to prevent its transmission. Rebecca Bundan, CGTN, at the United Nations in Geneva.
Now, currently, there are no confirmed cases of the coronavirus on the African continent. Angela Coppola has more from South Africa, where the country's health minister briefed the media on the situation.
The South African health authorities are ready for any eventuality. The World Health Organization has asked the country to initially take the lead in the identification of the virus on the continent.
We've already had requests from a number of different countries. Should they have a case, will we be able to assist both with testing and also with helping those laboratories in Africa to get up and running with doing testing in country. And so we are fulfilling that role as well.
Part of South Africa's response to a potential case of this coronavirus is to create a multidisciplinary task team. Included in that response is a manned emergency operations center on the NICD campus.
Emergency Operations Center is on high alert. There's a technical description of the stage at which we are. It's the highest you can ever be at if we're dealing with the kind of reports that we are facing right now. There are already hospitals that have been designated. Charlotte Maclege, Tembisa Hospital, and I think Steve Biko are the ones that are targeted.
The continent is waiting with bated breath for a case to be reported. This as questions are now being asked about when an infected person is contagious. The NICD laboratory and its highly skilled experts are on standby to test and verify the first suspected sample.
The laboratory here at the NICD of the NHLS has been requested by the World Health Organization and the Africa CDC to act as a reference laboratory for Africa, and we've agreed to fulfill this role.
Because most of the testing will also be referred to South Africa, irrespective of where the cases might be detected, we are very much likely to be aware of that information about the cases there, probably even before that country can confirm they've got it. It will be us who will be having a chance to confirm it.
As of today, there are no confirmed reported cases of the virus in South Africa or Southern Africa. There are a couple of suspected cases, and this operations center here in Johannesburg is ready to scale up when the actual first case gets uncovered. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's turn to news now from the Democratic Republic of Congo. At least 36 civilians have been killed by suspected rebels from the Allied Democratic Forces in the eastern part of the DRC. Local authorities say the killings took place in Beni on Wednesday morning. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The attack happened in the village of Manzingi near Beni territory in eastern DRC. Civil society organizations say the attackers shot and stabbed the victims. The organizations are blaming the killings on Ugandan rebels of the Allied Democratic Forces. Residents in the neighboring villages reported hearing gunfire on Wednesday morning. Local authorities say the rebels have been attacking civilians in retaliation for a military offensive launched by the Congolese armed forces last October. The Congolese army is working with UN peacekeepers to root out the rebels from their hideouts in eastern DRC. An international monitor says the ADF rebels killed close to 200 civilians in North Kivu province last month. The death toll was the highest since 2017. Violence in the region has also hampered efforts to stop the spread of the Ebola outbreak. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
You're watching Africa Live. Time now for a short break. Still ahead, it's a go. The UK gets ready for Friday's exit after the EU okays Brexit's terms.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
At the African Union headquarters in Ethiopia, preparations are well underway for February's African Union Summit. Libya will top the agenda, with climate change also a major priority. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoy looks at expectations ahead of the summit.
Libya will be top of the agenda for African heads of state when they meet here in February, as the fallout from the conflict there continues to be felt around the region.
I'm hoping that the benign effects, if we are able to stabilize Libya, will contribute to more peace and security in the neighboring countries. That is to say, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and the Sahel countries in particular. So peace and security is even more central than ever before.
Islamist groups in the Sahel have taken advantage of the chaos and the availability of weapons from Libya to gather strength. The February summit will follow a Libya peace conference that the African Union is planning in Congo-Brazzaville on 25th January, aiming to succeed in brokering peace where summits in Berlin and Moscow have failed. The summit's theme for 2020 is silencing the guns, developing Africa's capacity towards development.
We still have many million of Africans being moved by conflict, and we will work with all departments to see more peace or more peace agreement and to implement agreement signed between fighters, stakeholders in conflict in many countries to stop this situation.
After parts of the continent being hit by floods, droughts, cyclone and famine that have made the humanitarian situation in parts of the continent dire, some people say more priority has to be given to climate change.
This is beyond our control now. It's nature, but we need to be able to, put in place early warning mechanisms, early prevention mechanisms, quick intervention in good time to save lives. So we need to put in place climate resilient policies.
The summit also aims to remove barriers to trading within African countries. This, they say, will ease the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which promises expanded trade around the continent.
We need to create new engines of growth. We have talked a lot about diversifying our economies. Diversification is not just about stopping to export coffee and adding value to the coffee, or stopping to export cocoa and adding value to our cocoa. Diversification goes beyond that. We need also to open our services markets.
The heads of state and government also aim to reform the way the African Union Commission works, hoping to make it more efficient. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan may have won support with Israel, but it was bitterly rejected by Palestinians. Near the town of Tubas in the Jordan Valley, protesters waved Palestinian flags as Israeli soldiers looked on. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and Hamas, which has governed the occupied Gaza Strip since 2007, have all called for mass protests. Trump's proposals reportedly included no Palestinian input and grants Israel much of what it has sought in decades of international diplomacy. This includes control over Jerusalem as its undivided capital rather than a city to share with the Palestinians. It also offers Israel annexation of the strategically crucial Jordan Valley, which accounts for around 30% of the West Bank, as well as other Jewish settlements in the area. Now, Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unveiled that Middle East peace plan earlier this week. They described it as the deal of the century. The plan advocates for a two-state solution, with Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Yasser Hakim now takes a look at the reactions from the Arab world.
The plan has been outright rejected by several Arab countries, including the Palestinians themselves. Trump tried to sweeten the deal by pledging $50 billion of economic aid to Palestine. However, it is viewed by the region as a pro-Israeli plan, unfair to the Palestinian side.
The main contentious issue is announcing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. This is a major point of controversy with the Palestinians, who would not need on their demand of Jerusalem as the capital of their state. The fate of the refugees is another issue. You cannot stop someone from returning to their home country. The plan is to keep the refugees out of the country, and this is unethical. Other issues like borders are negotiable, but these 2 points will be a hurdle to peace.
Egypt has issued a statement describing the peace plan as an appreciated effort by the United States to achieve peace that should be built upon. It has also called for direct negotiations between the Palestinians and Israelis to hammer out a final comprehensive peace deal. Meanwhile, the Arab League has announced an urgent meeting of Arab foreign ministers on Saturday in Cairo. Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait had said that the deal wastes the legitimate rights of Palestinians. He added that the Arab League will carefully study the plan before making any response.
We have to admit that the Arab League does not have the tools to solve this crisis. What we expect from the meeting on Saturday is to denounce and reject the peace plan. What I wish is that the Arab League would issue its own roadmap for peace and counter the US plan. This would create an Arab vision for achieving peace rather than depending on the US version alone.
The deal of the century meant to achieve peace has certainly become a source of more tensions in the volatile region. According to experts here, the deal of the century has had one positive impact. It has managed to succeed in uniting the divided Palestinian factions. Hamas has announced its support to arch-foe President Mahmoud Abbas in his stance against the US peace plan. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The impeachment trial of the US president continues in the Senate. The White House has objected to the publication of a book by former National Security Advisor John Bolton, saying it breaks secrecy laws. Meanwhile, Republicans are trying to block witnesses who could raise the possibility of Trump's removal from office. CGTN's Owen Fairclough has more.
The Trump impeachment trial has entered a new and important phase. Both sides, the prosecution led by Democrats and President Trump's legal team, have presented their cases to senators, and it's the turn of those lawmakers to effectively cross-examine both sides over the next 2 days. But what is happening outside of Capitol Hill or away from Capitol Hill and Congress is arguably much more compelling right now, and it's down to one man. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, who's about to publish a new book in which he confirms for some that central allegation that Trump made contingent nearly $400 million of vital military aid to Ukraine and made that contingent on Ukraine investigating Joe Biden, who may be Trump's Democrat opponent in November's election. Now, the White House, it's been reported, is trying to block publication of that book, claiming Bolton is about to disclose classified information that would threaten US national security. And Trump has been trying his best to discredit Bolton, tweeting earlier this Wednesday, "Frankly, if I listened to him, Bolton, we would be in World War VI by now." He goes out and immediately writes a nasty and untrue book, all classified national security. But the leader of the Democrats in the US Senate has a different opinion. Here's Chuck Schumer.
John Bolton wrote that the president told him he wanted to continue the delay in military assistance to Ukraine until it announced the political investigations that he was seeking. Precisely the conduct charged in the first article. Now, I remain hopeful that 4 Republican senators will join us in supporting witnesses and documents in this trial.
Those 4 moderate Republicans are important because if they side with Democrats in voting to call new witnesses and potentially new evidence, then they would have enough to do just that. Those moderate Republicans want to be seen to discharge their duty of being impartial, but they may not necessarily want to convict and remove Trump from office. And remember, the Senate is controlled by Republicans, and ultimately it's unlikely that Trump would be removed from office following this impeachment trial. Why does it matter? Well, those Democrats want to call new witnesses to try and unearth damaging new information that they think may, just may, sway voters in November's election and prevent Trump from having a second term as US president. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Turning to Brexit, the European Parliament has approved Britain's departure terms from the EU, the final major step in the 4-year Brexit saga. Wednesday's vote ended 621 to 49 in favour of the deal that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson negotiated with the other 27 EU leaders. Britain will leave the EU on Friday after 47 years of membership, becoming the first country to leave the bloc. Time now for a short break. Here's what's coming up in your business news. Mining group De Beers kickstarts the year on a high with diamond sales up by 9%. And Nigeria's total debt stock rises to an estimated $72 billion at the end of September 2019.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
UK mining firm De Beers has recorded its highest sales of rough diamonds since April 2019, accruing a total revenue of $547 million. The firm recorded a 10% increase in revenue after posting sales worth $500 million in the same period last year. This signifies that the global market is beginning to recover from the downturn in 2019, attributed to a surfeit and logjam of cut and polished diamonds after slow buying of diamond jewelry. De Beers, which is 85% owned by Anglo American, is the world's leading source of rough diamonds by value, while Russia's Alrosa is the largest supplier measured by carats. Now, Nigeria's total debt stock has risen to an estimated $72.2 billion at the end of September 2019. According to the latest report released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the total debt rose from $70 billion in March. That's a 1.71% rise quarter on quarter. The debt stock category also shows that total external debt is estimated at $22.8 billion, 31.6% of total debt for the federal government, states and the FCT. The total domestic debt rose to $49.4 billion, or 68.45% of total debt stock within the quarter. All 36 states accrued domestic debt of $11.1 billion. Now, the coronavirus outbreak is posing a huge economic threat, not just in China, but in Africa too. In Nigeria, several traders travel to China to buy goods, while thousands of Chinese citizens live and work in the country. Economic exchange between the countries accounts for over $85 billion in trade volume, and as Kelechi Emekalam reports, that may change as the coronavirus continues to spread.
Chinedu Chiazo is a known importer of fabrics in the popular Wuse market in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. He's been in the business for over 2 decades. He's been able to grow his business from a startup of less than $100. Now he purchases goods worth over $30,000 from China and makes an average 5 trips yearly. But that would change now following the outbreak of the coronavirus.
When you are alive and healthy, that you can do investments. But then for those of us that our business for now depends in China, it's going to be much setback. It's going to affect trade for this year.
There are several businesses like Chinedu's here that are largely dependent on imports and trade from China. So many would be seeking alternatives.
It is better this time to send money across so that they can load the goods for you, especially if you have good and competent hands over there. But if you don't have, like I said, the most important thing is to be alive. So you cannot risk it.
Currently, China accounts for 15% of the global GDP, with many more countries depending on its thriving market. Many fear that the coronavirus outbreak would cause fatalities as well as impact negatively on the world economy if quick, effective interventions are not implemented to contain the virus. China is Nigeria's closest ally and most important trading partner. Trade volume between both countries run into billions of dollars, so Nigeria may be one of the worst hit.
What you experience is that for Nigeria, in bringing of goods from foreign countries, particularly those of us dealing with Chinese economy and being partners with China, we have a lot of challenges. More so that some of those goods, there is no immediate competitiveness or competition or alternative from which we can get them. So you might see increase in prices because so many persons may be demanding for goods because supply side may reduce while demand remains the same or increase.
Many here are now urging global leaders to work with China to conquer the menace of the coronavirus in order to save lives and economies from crumbling. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Avocado imports have been rising around the world, mostly due to demand from the European Union and the United States. But recently, China's avocado appetite has been on the rise, and this is forcing African states like Uganda to open up large expanses of avocado farms. From Kampala, here's CGTN's Michael Baleke.
Uganda's new green gold. Avocado is a tropical evergreen fruit tree found in most home gardens in Uganda. As the world strives to eat more healthily, the demand for the fruit is picking up, and local farmers are shifting away from less profitable crops to the highly valued avocado.
Avocado has been discovered to be the most complete fruit on earth. It is the only fruit that has monounsaturated fats. It is food. It is a complete food that anyone that pays attention to eating healthy would go for.
Figures from market analysts Research and Markets put the global consumption of avocados in 2018 at $9.3 billion. They say it's growing at a rate of 5% a year, and some of the varieties here in Africa are considered the world's finest. The Hass avocado variety is the most desired breed. Agronomists say it has a short maturity cycle of only 2.5 years, and a single tree like this one can produce at least 1,000 fruits or 200 kilograms per annum. The Hass avocado is preferred due to its higher protein and mineral content, a source of high-quality cholesterol, and is often used in cosmetics.
Its shelf life is much longer compared to the local varieties. The local varieties that we have can only be shipped to Europe and Asia and all the other consumers by air, currently from Africa. But Hass will give you an opportunity of transporting it by sea, and it will arrive to the target market still fresh.
Kenya is the largest exporter of avocados in Africa, according to the International Trade Center. But Uganda is hoping to catch up, taking advantage of year-round seasonality to grow the fruit. The country is hoping to capitalize on growing demand in markets like China, as well as a decline in production in countries such as Mexico and South Africa.
Here in Uganda, we are receiving a lot of rainfall, so we're having a wet season that is well spread throughout the year. Even the very tough times like January, February, we are always receiving rains maybe twice in a month, which makes it really okay with avocados.
Uganda's target is to plant 500,000 hectares of avocado trees. Several agribusiness companies have already started setting up nurseries to support farmers with high-yielding plants. The plan is expected to help the country raise revenues and grow its export market. But higher prices will also provide a boost to smallholder farmers. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Let's return to Brexit now. Concerns are looming over the potential disruption of supply chains as uncertainty lingers over the divorce deal. Additional checks and paperwork will be required for goods coming into Britain if it can't reach a deal with the European Union. For a country where 50% of food is imported, any slowdown could cause major problems. Our reporter Song Yaochan has that story.
Deliveries come and go at all hours here at Natura's South London depot. The fresh fruit and vegetable company supplies high-end restaurants and sells groceries through its own shops. It relies on an international supply chain and tight deadlines.
If products take longer to transit or if there is added bureaucracy in terms of moving product across, because we're dealing with an incredibly fresh product where every hour counts, it is worrying in that respect.
The company says it's already seeing a decline in sales to restaurants, which it links to consumer uncertainty over Brexit, while much of Natura's workforce is from the EU and concerned for their futures.
UK was part of Europe, so being part of Europe was my home as much as Italy. Since Brexit, I don't know if I can call it home, and just that makes me uncertain and not safe.
Given that the pound is also worth less than it was before the Brexit vote, the company says job applications from EU workers have dropped by 2/3 in the last year alone. British companies from supermarkets to car makers are preparing to stockpile. That's as they consider possible transit chaos at the border following Britain's former departure from the European Union 2 months later. British group Premier Foods has said it plans to stockpile to protect against a risk of delays at ports. Britain's biggest retailer, supermarket giant Tesco, said it could begin stockpiling tinned goods from this month. Away from the food industry, Britain's key car-making and pharmaceutical sectors have said they are also looking at possible stockpiling. Song Yaotian, CGTN.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has officially signed a new trade deal with Mexico and Canada, officially marking an end to the 1994 North American Free Trade Agreement. CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg has more from Washington.
On the campaign trail, then candidate Donald Trump threatened to tear up NAFTA. He called the North American Free Trade Agreement, signed with Canada and Mexico under then-President Bill Clinton, one of the worst deals ever. But once in the White House, Team Trump chose to renegotiate the deal instead, to, as some say, modernize its terms. On Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump signed the revised version into law.
Everybody said this was a deal that could not be done. Too complicated, too big, couldn't be done, we got it done.
For its part, Mexico ratified the agreement in December, even though new language could mean fewer U.S. automakers will make their cars south of the border, and more American jobs will stay in America. Last but not least, Canada's House of Commons on Wednesday began debating the final text. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who negotiated the deal when he had a majority government, but now leads a minority one, promised not to rush the process.
Millions of Canadians depend on stable, reliable trade with our largest trading partners, from farmers in Alberta and auto workers in Windsor to aluminum producers in Saguenay and entrepreneurs in St. John's or in Vancouver.
Canada agreed to open up its dairy industry to the U.S., but insisted on keeping Chapter 19 in place, the dispute resolution mechanism, and it got it. Mary Scott Greenwood served as Chief of Staff to the U.S. Ambassador to Canada under the Clinton administration.
The United States thinks it can throw its weight around and people will do a deal because of the size of the marketplace. A country like Canada says we need to be able to abide by the rules and have everybody abide by the rules because we're not the biggest player in the room.
It could be weeks before Ottawa ratifies the deal, but that's not stopping Washington from taking a victory lap, in particular Trump.
He's definitely basking in the glow of this achievement, but there's a lot of good news to go around.
Indeed, in the U.S., both Republicans and Democrats will tout this as a win in what's a crucial election year. Trump, of course, has also tackled trade across both the Pacific and the Atlantic, withdrawing from some multilateral deals while pursuing new bilateral ones.
This trade agreement, the USMCA, is a necessary precursor to every other trade agreement that comes, because the whole world watches what the U.S. does, and if the U.S. couldn't get it over the goal line with Canada, who could they get it done with?
Roy Ruttenberg, CGTN in Washington.
The European Union has unveiled new security guidelines for the next generation of high-speed wireless networks. This marks the latest setback for the U.S. campaign against Chinese tech firm Huawei. The announcement comes as Huawei gears up for the building of non-critical parts of the UK's 5G infrastructure.
The Commission will support the implementation of the EU approach to 5G cybersecurity by working to ensure a diverse and sustainable 5G supply chain, for example, via the application of the foreign direct investment screening, trade defense instruments, competition rules to make sure there's no lock-in, as well as through EU funding programme and their security conditionality. Furthermore, the Commission will facilitate coordinations among Member States on standardisation and EU-wide certification.
Well, that's where we leave your business news. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Putting her best foot forward, we find out how one dancer is promoting Chinese culture in South Africa.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
to bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A woman from Sichuan province in China is shaking things up in South Africa. This year, along with making a hot pot for her family over the Chinese New Year, she staged a traditional Chinese dance performance in 4 audiences in Cape Town. Let's take a look.
Days before the Chinese New Year, Mao Shan and her band of young performers were busy with training and rehearsing at her home studio. A professional dancer herself, Mao Shan continued her career after moving to Cape Town in 2013 with her family, where she teaches and promotes Chinese dance culture. Her hard work has paid off. Performances that have been choreographed by the teacher are popular among Chinese and South African audiences. A number of them have even been included on the list of classic performances by Cape Town's Huaxing Art Troupe, a Chinese art organization dedicated to promoting Chinese culture around the world.
I'm so happy that South African audiences liked our performance. My hard work has paid off. I'm really touched.
非常非常的激动。那我们四川人的油碟和其他地方都不一样，我们会放大蒜、辣椒、葱、香菜，但我们不可缺少的是芝麻油，还有就是。
From stage to home, Mao Shan is busy preparing hot pot for the whole family to celebrate Lunar New Year's Eve. Speaking of her experiences in South Africa, she thanks her love of spicy food for keeping her going.
来到南非之后，我发现很多华人华侨和我一样。
After settling in South Africa, I realized overseas Chinese here don't have much of a social life. I used to be a professional dancer, so I organized a group of housewives, all from Sichuan, to teach them how to dance and reshape their bodies. We performed as well. After years of training and performing, we gained a bit of popularity here. This is me. Take it and live it. I guess the fact that I love spicy food must be the reason.
是川妹子，四川人喜欢吃辣椒，有原因吧。
For Mao Shan, showcasing Chinese culture far from home is as important as taking care of her family. She says hot pot is a special Chinese New Year's Eve treat, not just in Sichuan, but in South Africa as well. Filling her family with happiness, love, and prosperity for the year ahead.
新年快乐！新年快乐！
我们举杯！新年快乐！
CGTN.
Meanwhile, the Chinese national living in Mauritius for almost 30 years now has used her passion for teaching to help local residents learn and understand Mandarin and the Chinese culture. Hu Venkatasamy is also passionate about the New Year celebrations, so much so that every year she invites her students and their families to her house for a New Year's Eve feast. Hu hopes to give them a taste of Chinese traditions and the Spring Festival.
我叫胡彤莹，今年52岁。
It's a great pleasure to teach children in Mauritius Chinese. Every time when they manage to speak Mandarin fluently or have learned a new Chinese song, it makes my day. I see a future where every Mauritian will be able to speak Mandarin.
我的心里就特别激动。
Some of my students have become my colleagues. They're also teaching Chinese, and some have even become diplomats. Many students choose to go to China for university every year. I'm proud of them from the bottom of my heart. I didn't celebrate the Chinese New Year for almost 20 years, but now I celebrate it with my Mauritian family every year. When the Spring Festival approaches, I decorate my house in red and make sure everyone who steps in the house can smell Chinese New Year. I usually do the same to my classrooms at school. I wear different Chinese chipawa every day for a week around Spring Festival so that people around me, like my colleagues and students, would know it's a Chinese New Year. I also throw a New Year party at my place and invite everyone for New Year's Eve feast for them to get a feel of what Spring Festival is like and what Chinese tradition is like. Everyone around me now has a good knowledge about it.
Happy New Year!
Now, a Tunisian startup aims to help beekeepers monitor the temperature, humidity and quality of bee humming to protect their hives. The app works by sending alerts to the user, describing the problem so as to prevent it from escalating. With more on this, here's CGTN's Daniel Arab-Moy.
Honey is secondary. Bees, aside from producing the sweet, sticky stuff, are an essential ingredient to global agriculture for their pollinating prowess. But climate change and disease continue to strain their ability to do the job. Hoping to now change this buzzing problem is Khalid Boshusha. Boshusha founded Iris Technologies in 2016 and developed an electronic device called Smart Bee. The idea came to Boshusha in 2011 when his father, a beekeeper, lost a number of his beehives in a heat wave.
The beehive sector is facing a lot of problems, external problems as well as problems experienced by farmers. External problems include changes in the climate, which is affecting the beehives and the plants on which the bees feed on. Other problems facing the farmers include theft and beehive collapse. According to the World Food Programme, 3/4 of the plants that we eat come through bee pollination. As such, bees are very important to human life.
Smart Bee is a card with sensors that transmit brood temperature and other measurements to the cloud. The device allows vets employed by Boshusha's company to advise beekeepers on how to optimize hive health. For just $137, beekeepers get the card plus monthly vet visits for 5 years. After that, they pay a monthly subscription based on the operation's size.
What we tried to do as a company is to develop a device that helps the farmer improve cost effectiveness and the efficiency by sensing signs of problems that may occur in the beehive. The device is Smart Bee, which we place at the center of the hive in order to provide us with the accurate information about the state of the cell. It then takes decisions in record speed, preventing a number of problems. All this information is provided through the smartphone, delivered through short messages.
The innovative pilot apiary, as it's called, hosts 10 beekeepers throughout Tunisia in an agricultural incubator.
Today, we need new technology to provide us with information relating to climate change as well as fires or other temperature fluctuations and humidity, though indicators we receive to help us in the future make the right decisions for how to manage a beehive.
I started with 15 beehives. I faced many problems throughout my experience, the most important of which was the stealing of hives and climate change, which caused the collapse of the beehives due to the sudden fluctuations of temperature and humidity.
At the moment, he is trying to register his company in Europe. He is also eyeing emerging markets across Africa, starting with Ethiopia and South Africa. Eventually, the goal is to develop other companies that use technology to enhance agriculture. Daniel Arab-Moy, CGTN.
Coming up in your sports news, up next. South Africa's Vernon Philander bids farewell to international cricket.